Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ijaz and I create videos around JavaScript. I try building small projects and share them here on this platform. Today, the name of this project is Glyph AI Pro, as we are doing a little more than what we did in the previous project. So let's get to the demo. So what we are going to do in this project is that I have images with tabular data in it, and in this project we will be using AWS Textract. So we will extract the data or the tabular data from those images, and we will insert those records into the database. Yeah, I'll quickly show the images that I have. So over here you can see, yeah, so it's a table. It's basically like a visitor form. So uh, whoever enters the building or any campus, so they have to write their names, ID card number, then phone, in time, out time, and signature. So these are the few things that the visitor has to add, and it will be done manually. So now the thing is, what we want to achieve is, instead of like either we don't put it in the database at all, or if anyone wants to put it, they will have to either do a manual entry. So can we use AWS Textract to put these records into the database? That's what I have tried to do, and I will quickly show how we can do it. So before that, I'll show the database. Like, this is the database. In this I have created a table as visitors. So if I go here, so in the visitors table, so currently we don't have any records. So we will quickly just okay, so we'll just get started, and I will browse to that file. Yeah, so this is the file. So I will quickly upload this file, and once I click on process, so this file goes to AWS Extract, and AWS gives us some JSON response. But that JSON response is a little complex. I mean, it takes time to understand. It's not this straightforward. So what we have to do is we have to understand and see how we can get the data out of that JSON response and recreate the table over here. So you can see it was quick. We got the response, and then I am doing a few I'm doing some kind of calculation at the back end, and then I'm building these rows. So it's good. Like, if I open this, so you can see that it has correctly identified, and we were able to get the so we were able to get the data correctly in our over here. And if I check the database, so you can see that in the database also we got the values updated. So this is a small flow of how different services are connected to this application. So this is the client. So as soon as we upload a file, like we select a file and we click on process from the application, so the request goes to the backend, that is the API route, which is actually a server. So it will the first thing it does is it will upload our file, our image file, which has the tabular data, into the S3 bucket. Now in the previous video I showed that in the AWS Textract. Like, in this video we will be using analyze document action from AWS Textract. So in the request parameter, you can see we can send an S3 object. So in the previous video we sent bytes, a blob, but in this one we will be making use of S3 object. So once the file is received, we quickly upload it to S3 bucket, and in return we get back the few of the parameters that can help us pass to the AWS Textract. So once the file is uploaded to S3 bucket, then we create this request parameter with the S3 bucket, S3 object with the name, bucket name, and version. If you have multiple versions of the file, so you can give the version, otherwise it will pick the latest version of the file. So once we send the S3 bucket, S3 object in the request parameter, we get back a JSON response from AWS Textract, which we will see just in a second. And then we process that response. Then we build proper queries to insert the data or insert each record into the SQLite database. It can be any database. I'm using SQLite as the ORM, and you can use Postgres, MySQL, any database. And then once it is inserted, then we are sending back all the records so that we can display it on the client screen. Now let's first see what kind of response we get once we send the image with the tabular data to Textract. What kind of response do we get back? So this is a sample response that we get back once we send the image to the AWS Textract. Now in this you can see this is it has all the data that we need. Like this is the response, this is just the document metadata which says the number of pages we uploaded, and then there is nothing else other than the blocks. Like, so everything that we want is inside blocks. Now over here we can see that there are many different types of block types. Like one over here it says page. Now if I look for more, so you can see it says line, and it also has, if I look for, it has word, it has cell, it has table, it has table. So I think it was table title. Yeah, so it has table title as well. So there are many different types of blocks that is returned from AWS Textract. Now the image that we have is a table. So what we will be doing is we will be targeting block type of cell. So because in our cell we will have a row index and the column index, using which we can recreate a table and uniquely identify the cells and everything, so that we can put it in our database. And if we scroll down in this object, so you can see it has relationships, and over here it says IDs. So basically this block is of type cell and it has a child. And the ID of the child is this. So if I look for the ID, if I look for a block which has an ID of this, so if I scroll up, you can see it has a block type of word, and the text is s.no, that is the serial number, which is basically this. So it says that in the row 1 column 1 the cell has a block type of word which has a text of serial number. So basically one thing we understand here is the row starts with the number 1, and we can, if we can somehow figure out how to if we can figure out the cells, if we can just extract all the cells, and then from each cell if we can extract these IDs, then we can reach to the text inside that cell. So I will show how I wrote this logic to extract. And one more thing was that I did not wanted to traverse this whole array more than once, because it will be actually a performance issue. So I will go through the code and we'll see how I extracted the data from each cell. And for sure there can be better ways to do it, so I'll show how I have done. So jumping into the code, this project is built in Next.js, and I'm using Tailwind CSS for styling. Then we are using AWS SDK as we are using AWS services. Then we have SQLize ORM, SQLite 3. Then we have this formidable serverless, as we will be sending a form data from the front end. So going to the next file. So in the environment.local we should have an AWS account, and we should provide here the access ID, access key, region, and the bucket name, because we'll be making use of it. Then I'll first go through the API part, and then I'll go to the front end code. So once from the front end, once the process button is clicked, once we select a file and we click on the process button, so you can see that over here we are receiving a form. Basically it's a form data which has a file. So we'll first identify the file. If there is no file, just say if no file uploaded, and if these things are not there, so like we'll just return some small checks that I've implemented. Now over here we are using the environment variable S3 bucket, so we are selecting an S3 bucket and the file. Now if I go to this function I have written it is inside AWS services. So if I come here, you can see over here we are building an AWS object, and the same using the same we'll be creating Textract also. So in this we'll first create an S3 object, and then we are building the params, and then we are doing an upload. So I've created this function which we are using in here. So we just have to pass the bucket name and the file that we got back, and it will upload. So we'll be waiting unless first it is uploaded, then we'll proceed next. And because we already have the we'll get back from S3, we'll get back few information. So we'll be using the bucket and key basically is the file name, and bucket is of course the same bucket. And for the analyze document, because we'll be using analyze document, so for analyze document, if I check here, so in this we have to give the it was feature types, right? Yeah, the feature types. Like in the feature type, it means what kind of what are the valid values, a list of types for analysis to perform. So if you have forms in the image, or if you are making queries, like you can even ask queries so that it will respond you back. And if there are signatures, and if there are tables, so these are the it's an array that we have to pass. So because we we want tables, we have tables and we have signatures. So that is why we have to pass in the request parameter. This is for the document and this is for the feature types. Now Textract we already saw, like it's nothing. We are just creating a Textract object here, and that's what we are exporting. I think it's a default export. So in Textract we can do .analyze document. Now in Textract there are many different actions that Textract provides us. So there are many different actions that Textract provides, like analyze document, analyze expense, detect document text, analyze ID. So these 4 are basically synchronous operations, and the remaining are asynchronous, so which will return a job ID. Like once we submit a request, a quick response is returned with a job ID, and then once it is processed we get back a notification that the job is processed. So in the previous video we used detect document text. In this video we are using analyze document. So if we come here, if we like in the Textract doc, so over here you can see we can get all those functions because we are using AWS SDK. Yeah, so once and because it is asynchronous, so it's asynchronous, so we will get back the response, and this response that we get is what the JSON we just saw. This is what we get back once we at this point. Now the response that we get, we have to now identify how we have to strategize how we are going to get back all the data in a proper format, so that we can, because the data has been identified, now we have to collect it properly, and then we have to put it in the database or whatever we want to do. So I created one function, process Textract response, which will give us back it will give us back some information using which we can build the rows of data. So over here what my strategy was, or what my strategy is, that first of all I am building picking up all the blocks, because if I come here you can see that everything is inside the blocks and it's an array. Now max row and max column, because in our image there are some empty rows as well, so we don't want to spend our time in this. We don't want any data in here. I mean, there's no data actually, so we don't want those rows. So we will be collecting all the cells, then we will be collecting all the words, and we will be collecting all the cells that have sign. Now we will not be collecting every cell, we will be collecting we will be collecting only those block types which are of type cell, which have some relationship, because there are cells which are empty, so there is no child inside those cells, so we want to ignore those. So that's what we are doing here. So we will iterate through each block of blocks, and we'll see if there is any block type of cell which, and we have to make sure that every block has some relationships. Then only we will, what we'll do is we will first capture a row and column, so that because for first row first column, so it will be 1 1. We'll create a key, so the key will be 1 1. Now this is unique because the cell at this 1 1 will have some unique data, and then 1 2 will have some other data, 1 3, then similarly 2 1 2 2 2 3. So this is how I'm creating a key, and I'm putting inside the cells data. So for the first row first column, cells data 1 1, that is a string, will have all the relationships and all the child that it holds. So if I come here and if I look for block type cell, so if I come here, so I'm looking for the block type which has a relationship, so that's fine. Then I am trying to get all the IDs, because this ID has the ID of all the words that this cell holds. So I am just keeping this, I'm just trying to extract that. So in cell 11 I'm putting all the IDs. Similarly cell 22, it will have all the IDs. So this is how cells data object will be populated. Then max row, I'm just checking if the max row, if the row is greater than max row, then we will increase it. We will consider row as the new max row, otherwise we'll just stick to max row. Similarly, because we want to put everything in one iteration, so we will check if there is a block type of word. If we have a block type of word, so what we are doing is we have this words data JavaScript object. In this we are putting all the IDs, we are putting all the block ID. That is, if we come here and we look for word, now in this we will in that if block, we will come to this block and we will save this ID. This ID will be the key, and whatever text it holds will be the value. So you can see block ID is the key, and whatever text it holds, it will be the value. And we will be creating we have one array of signed data, which is an array, it's not an object, and we will be pushing all the block IDs which have a block type of signature. So if I just change this to signature, so we are capturing nothing but this ID over there. Okay, so once this is ready, so our like pre-processing kind of thing is done. Now we have everything to build a table out of it. So this is what we will return: the max row, max column, cells data, words data, and sign data. So we'll return this, and yeah, so once this is returned, we will now send this to prepare data. So now we will be preparing the table data. So once we get back, so it's like an iteration of row and column. So we'll go all the way, we'll be iterating through each row, and then for each column, because like for each row it has multiple columns, for each column we will be building the key again, because this is how we will be extracting the data from cells data. And once we get the data from cells data, it is basically an array of IDs, like we saw it was from the relationship.IDs. So yeah, so before that, like from the cell IDs, what I'm doing is I'm iterating through the words data, because words data's key is basically the ID and its value is the actual text. So because a cell can have multiple words, so hello world is like, if we write hello world in a cell, it will be 2 words, so each word has a separate ID. So this cell data IDs will have 2 IDs. So we are iterating through each ID, and we'll pass each ID to words data object, which will return us a text hello and world, and then we'll join it together, and that data we will put in the calls array. Now you can see that because this row and column, this is like I have put it 1, so that is why I'm just putting it j-1, but it's up to you, like yeah, I mean maybe in that case we could have just kept it 0 and we didn't have to plus it here. So it's like, anyway, both ways are fine. And one way to check, and over here I'm just checking if it is a signature. So I'll just check if any of the IDs in the cell data IDs, like that is why I'm using .sum, is present in the signed data. So I will say that it is a signature, and because it is available, so I'll just say signature true. And like this I'll be iterating through each row, and I'll be pushing it into the rows array. So it will return a multi-dimensional array with multiple rows of data. So once we get the table data, we can actually send it back and we can create on the front end, but we have to put it in the database as well. So over here I'm preparing data to insert, because for inserting it into a table we should have like a key value pair. So I'm just over here, I'm not doing nothing, but I'm just doing a key value pair for each value in the row, and it's returning an object. So once we get that back, then I am doing a bulk create, that is a bulk insert in the visitor model. And once it is inserted, I'm just returning it back. Now we can quickly see the visitor model as well. So because I'm using SQLize, so it's like very straightforward, like we have name, ID number, phone, in time, out time, signature. And yeah, this is an initialize function that we will be calling in underscore app.js, so that this SQLize.sync can run, and it can create all the models for us. And yeah, that initialize we are calling from here. You can see that only if window is not present, that is only on the server side we want this to run, and this initialize will run, which will create the tables for us. So like this is the all the backend basically code that we are using here. And I'll quickly go through the front end, which is very simple, because over here you can see there is a file upload component where I'm just uploading a file, and I'm passing a set data array, which once we get a response on the backend, so that this data array can be updated. And once we get that data back, then I am just iterating through this is for the header, and this is for the body. I'm simply iterating through each of the multi-dimensional array, each row of the array. And in the file upload, you can see that this is nothing but a input type of type file, and on file change, and on file change, this is nothing actually, because I'm just checking if it's an image file. And on handle process, this is where I'm making a call to API process, and you can see over here it has form data which I'm sending, and once we get the response back, I'm just updating the set data array. And we are using React Hot Toast to display errors, just in case if we get any error from the backend. So I hope you like this project, and I will be adding links to the GitHub repo and the Textract documentations. And if you like the repo, like the code, you can start the repo, and if you like the video, maybe you can like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching.